Okay, everybody, welcome to the Emergency Preparedness Challenge training about budgeting. And we are super lucky, you guys, because we have Adis Busha with us today, who is the founder of New Money Mama and a money breakthrough mentor. The reason why I wanted to have Adis come on here and speak with us is because she has a wealth of experience and knowledge about helping us to wrangle our money matters, including stuff about emergency preparedness purchases. Let me tell you a little bit more about Adis and we're going to get started. So after moving to the United States as a child, she went from living in a cockroach-infested apartment to being financially independent as a sought-after teacher and speaker. She shares highly effective strategies to thousands of families and entrepreneurs on how to use their divine gifts to make money. Adis is known for empowering people to create beyond the limits of their mind and create true wealth so their choices are never limited by money again. Adis, thank you so much for coming on the Emergency Preparedness Challenge.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am an emergency preparedness nerd. I've loved it for years, so this is perfect.
Awesome. Love it. Woo, woo. You're in good company, sister. I love it. It's so good. So I think, Adis, you and I have known each other, I don't know, like almost a decade now or something. Like we go back pretty far. I know that you are fantastic in helping people, like I said, just wrangle their money stuff and get into this place of just like flow with money. And I feel like there's a lot of emotion around emergency preparedness that is just like, it's kind of crazy town in our heads, right? I think of those emojis with the stars that are exploding, right? And it's like, what am I doing? So I'm really glad that you could come and share some of your wisdom with us here in the challenge, because I've been sharing for 2 weeks all of these pieces of all these parts about water and food and shelter and heat, and then planning, organizing, all these things like 72-hour kits and medical kits and all stuff. And we start to think about it. If you're going to buy all of this stuff, that's like, it might be pretty overwhelming for people. So tell us, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so that's a thought I have a lot of, I consider a lot because I remarried about 4 years ago and I inherited 6 additional kids in that marriage. And so what was our perfect emergency plan was busted because now we had to expand it. So the first thing I do want to touch on, though, is just because of all the things that you mentioned, sometimes it can get overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I got to get my rice and my ham radio and my ammo and my shelter, everything in place. And so I believe strongly to focus, meditate, pray on where to begin. So my husband and I, we have a lot of resources. We make a lot of money. And even regardless of the money that's available to us, we have to pray and meditate about where to begin first. You can't do it all at once because then you're just going to do shoddy work or you're going to miss things, right? So it's important to focus. And then the second thing that I strongly believe, and especially after chatting with some people who survived, the wars in Serbia, is it's important to connect with others, to network, because you'll be inspired and want to work on in your preparedness. And if you build good connections, a lot of gaps can be filled through trade, purchasing, and goodwill. So those are the main 2 things, just to like calm down those stars a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, God's got my back and my neighbors will get my back too if we work together, if it's mutual, helping,
Yeah, I love it. I think that's awesome. At the very beginning of the Emergency Preparedness Challenge, I provided to the attendees a document that's basically a planning piece. And I encouraged them to pick one thing that they want to work on amongst those 4 different categories, right? And also to think about what's the emotion that they want to have as they think about being prepared, right? Like, what does that feel like? And so, like for me, kind of an obvious one is it feels peaceful, because if I've got my stuff together, then it's like, okay, doesn't matter what happens in the world because I just feel peaceful, right? And so I'm so glad that you talked about that piece about let's stop, let's get grounded. What is the divine aspect to this? And there's folks from all different, spiritual, religious backgrounds who are part of this challenge. But the reality is like that's a great starting place. And so then you can make those decisions to say, oh, okay, well, what is the one thing we're going to do around water? What's the one thing we're going to do for food? What's the one thing we're going to do for our shelter and our heat? What's the one thing we're going to do for our planning and organization? And then if you're making those decisions, it's kind of nice, because if you know the emotion you're going for, you're going to know whether or not you're getting spun out. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I've been to those big events, like the PrepperCon type events, right? Where there's just hundreds of vendors and so many things. And you walk in and it's just like, I'll just take one of everything, apparently, because I need it all, right? But I'm also looking like, no, I don't need it all. And so let's talk about, there's this, and that's just like a prepper event, right? But there's the internet, there's grocery stores, whatever, and there's all these things that we could buy. So chat with us about, how do we even just start this approach of saying, okay, well, where am I going to spend my dollars? How am I going to get started on this?
So I think you are very wise, because I too have been part of a lot of preparedness groups and events, and I wish they would spend a little more time with the focus that you've given. Okay, what do you want to feel? So with everything, with money, with helping clients launch businesses, with preparedness, with anything, the first step is to know what you have. You got to know what you have. And since we're talking about money specifically today, about where to find the cash for the things that we're wanting to prepare for, I'm referring specifically now to your money and resources. It's important to know, how much is it that you're spending each month? And now a lot of people say, well, I know it's not enough. I know at the end of the month, there's very little. There's nothing to save up for emergencies or for preparedness. I will challenge you on that, because on every single client I've ever had, whether they were below poverty level or where they were seven-figure income earners, once we really documented what they had, they were always, 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 always surprised. And even if, let's say you happen to be the anomaly that tracks what you actually own and what you already have going through your house, there's a possibility that when you are looking at the numbers, you can start and now meditate, pray, seek, search, ask mentors. How can I do this differently? There might be different ways of rearranging your expenses, different ways of paying for them. And so I can't go into detail here, but the first thing is, guys, just go through your bank account and put down what you spent in July, put it in categories, put it food, utilities, whatever it is. Just record what happened in July and create a duplicate of that and what you think is going to happen in August as far as expenses. Take a look at that, okay? So the second thing is, sometimes when we get so passionate about preparedness, and I teach all my clients to prepare, purchase some extra food, do this, I include that in the mentoring because it's important. So the second thing is to make sure that you set aside some cash for emergencies. So you might be tempted to get all the cash that comes in and you put it towards your emergency preparedness or your food or your protection, things like that. However, what I like to do, especially when there's an economic event coming up, which our country is entering one, is to make sure that we keep the household expenses small or stabilized. So if you have no savings in place, right, and then you go into a recession and now you have to put things on credit card, you're now including a new minimum payment onto your expenses, right?
Right.
So if we can, and I'll share with you some ideas of where to find this cash. You're like, I don't have any money for savings, much less corn and whatever. So, but I just want to make sure that you don't just rush out and fill your house with oats if there's no money in your savings. You want to have a little bit of cash to protect you. So the third thing I'm going to suggest, and this is where we start finding money, is for those of you who are employed by an employer, you're not self-employed, I'm going to challenge you and say this is not the time to continue saving in your 401k. So adjust your paychecks. Adjust your paychecks so that your take-home pay is larger. Take a look at your pay stub and look at how much is going into your 401k or retirement plan at work. And that's how much money you could be bringing in, minus a little bit of taxes, right? Mm-hmm. But this is the very first thing you got to stop, because the market is not going to be kind to your retirement. So it's a good time to stop. That's an easy way to bring home anywhere from like $100 to $1,000 extra, depending on what your contributions are. So is that something that you've already been teaching, Jen?
Not yet. No, we haven't gotten into the finance budget part of it yet.
Okay, cool. All right. So the other thing is, because we're entering a recession, there is interest rates are low. So this is the time to refinance your loans. So refinance your car, even if it's just 1% down or 0.5% down. That could free up an extra $100, $200. It depends on what your loans are. Refinance your mortgage. Oh my goodness, all my clients are doing that, and that's freeing up cash flow for them to use for their emergency prep. Look at your credit cards. When's the last time that they reconsidered lowering your interest rates, right? Just call. What they might say? They might say no.
Right. Never hurts to ask.
No, I guess it could hurt your ego, right? But honestly, you're gonna have the same payment you had before they said no. Mm-hmm. So just see what they have. They might have some sort of 0% special, or they might say, oh, you know what, your score's gotten better, let's just reduce this payment, or we have this thing that, whatever. Find out your options. I've been able to, my very first client I ever had in my business was afraid to call her creditor. So I had to give her a script. And she called me the next day. She's like, I did it, and it freed up $300 a month. And this is the person who thought she was going to go bankrupt, right? So just call, just ask, get your interest rates down. Cars, homes, credit cards. All right. So this is the other thing this is the one thing I get a lot of pushback. And that is sell whatever you no longer love or need.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to stay portable. You got to stay clear-headed. You've got to fill your home with the things that make you feel the emotions that Jen had you ponder on. So if you're wanting to feel more peace, look around your home, look around in your belongings, that shed, the garage. Do those things make you feel peace? Or if you want to feel secure, or if you want to feel adventurous, if you want to feel strong, powerful, surround yourself with things and ambiance that helps you feel that way. So for me, I like to feel like things are in order. I can find it quickly. And so that's how I arrange my home. And I'm constantly selling things, donating things, right? Just a month ago, I live on a mountain, and just a month ago, the mountain caught on fire in the middle of the night. And luckily, because everything's in order, I know where everything is. We knew where 72-hour kits were. We knew where our emergency binder is that lists everything we take with us, depending how much time we have to evacuate. And so that made things simpler. But you know what? That drill was also helpful, because I never in my life thought that the fire would have taken out the electricity. And so luckily we had flashlights, but then I'm carrying, my bag and a flashlight and trying to get ready with one hand in the dark with my kids, so imagine if my house would have been a wreck and trying to step on Legos in the middle of the night.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yes. Yep.
So create in your home the order that you need in order to quickly get the things that you need. So that involves selling or donating things you no longer love that you did at one point, but now you're like, I'm a different person now. The things that you no longer need, that you needed it when you were 20 and had a table made out of construction wire spools or whatever, but now you're like, oh, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
So tell me some of your thoughts on that.
Well, one thing I was just thinking about in regards to selling stuff and and purging things and getting out of your house, I was thinking about in my neighborhood where I live, we have a Facebook group that's for our greater neighborhood. And so people post stuff all the time on there that they really don't need anymore. And like, for example, we went through our shed. So we did this about 2 months ago. We pulled everything out of, we have a lifetime shed on our property. And so it's not a huge like shop, but it's a pretty good size shed. And so we had a bunch of just tools and kind of gardening type stuff and whatever in there. But it was one of those, we had moved into this house like 5 years ago, and we just dumped all the stuff in there, just threw it in there, and then additional stuff got added to it over time. And so when we pulled it out, we literally found like empty boxes. Like, why is this in here? Like, not a collapsed down box, but like a box that was but totally empty.
It's ready to go.
Yeah, right. And so it was just like, wow, okay. And that whole time I thought, oh, there must be something in that box, but who knows why we set it in there, but we did. And so it was really helpful to go through, and then we identified some stuff that we could just straight up throw out. But then also we posted on our neighborhood Facebook group, there were some tools that we have that like, what is this thing? Like, there were some of them, I'm like, what is this for? You know? And so I know there's some people who are in this group who are like, you never get rid of a tool. Like, you just don't do it. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe you do. Maybe like you kind of come to terms, or maybe you have too many of them, or, you know, whatever it is. And golly, I'll tell you what, Adise, having that shed cleared out and organized, if I needed to go get a tool today because there's an earthquake and something happens at my house and I need a tool, bam, I know right where the keys are. I know right how to, you know, where I'm going and to go inside the shed. And it doesn't actually, even if it was like 2:00 in the morning where there's like barely any light outside, I would still know basically where to go. And so I think that you're right on that. Like, it brought me peace. Again, that's the thing I'm going for, right? But it brought me peace because we let go of stuff that we didn't need. We reorganized. We made it so it was more user friendly for us, and that just and in the end, it's still that same shed, right? Like, it's still the same shape, but it just is so much more peaceful to my heart that it's organized, and I you know what I need to do. And I also feel it's like, how cool is that I was able to share some stuff freely with people that they need, that maybe help save them some money, you know. And there's just been kind of that rotation of stuff and things, and I've noticed in our neighborhood that's really awesome. And I also want to share with you another thing, because you talked about like trade, barter, like those kinds of things.
Yes.
On our property, we're actually getting ready to do foodscaping in our whole front yard, where we're literally scraping off our entire lawn. We're putting in grow boxes, and in doing this design of it, we realized that there's this big tree in our front yard that is a horribly ugly tree. It's been there 20 years, as long as this house has been here. And it's totally compromising what we're trying to do with planting our grow boxes. And so my husband and I were like, well, tree's out of here. So we called up tree companies, right? The ones that come and they cut down the tree and they grind out the stump and stuff. And it was like $670 is what they quoted us. And we're like, okay, that's a chunk of change. But if we're going to really do this, like, now's the time. We don't put grow boxes in and then have them come cut down a 30. Yeah. Like, that's not going to work. And so, and then my husband had the idea. He's like, well, why don't you just post in the Facebook group and see if anybody wants a tree to like come cut it down. Well, lo and behold, there is a gentleman who, his girlfriend lives in our neighborhood. She saw the post. He is, anyhow, he likes to hand make his own bows and arrows. This is like a passion of his. So he came by the house and he's like, oh, that's a flowering pear tree. That's fantastic wood for what I like to do. He's coming on Monday to take the tree down. And then we've got somebody else who's going to do the grump, hello, that's the grinding of the stump. I just came up with word for it, but yeah, anyhow, so the grinding of it. And I think now it's like maybe $160. So just simply by thinking outside of the box, thinking, how could this be helpful? We, in essence, just saved our family $500+ and the wood's going to go to somebody who's going to do something really cool with it anyhow, you know? And so it's amazing when you think outside the box. I just wanted to share those couple ideas that align with what you're talking about.
exactly what you're talking about is what I teach my children and what I teach my clients is, yes, it's important to learn how to acquire, attract resources, but it's more important to become resourceful.
Yeah.
And the only way we really practice being resourceful is by finding ourselves within parameters that we wouldn't have chosen in the first place. Then that starts our brain thinking, like, what can I do? And if you start going to like, oh, I can't do anything, just encourage yourself, like, but if I could do something, what other options are there?
Yeah.
That's been, I've used Neighbors and Facebook Marketplace and KSL Classifieds to solve a lot of problems. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to move this. Hey, anybody want a free blah, 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 or really low price for this thing? And I don't tell them it's because I don't want to move it, or I don't want to cut it, or I want to,
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I hear you. You got to think outside the box, because the world that we're living in, it is not in the box that we designed,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it's not going to serve us to continue thinking in the way that worked before. Everything's shifting. Relationships are shifting. Policies are shifting. Just going to the grocery store is shifting. Being able to find things for emergency preparedness is shifting. Oh my gosh, just going out buying some of these supplies, I'm like, oh, they're sold out. Oh, that's out of stock. Oh, it's going to be a long time before that is back on the shelf, So
Yeah.
I want to share with you another way that you might want to consider. And again, meditate, pray, trust your intuition on what is right for you. But one of the ways that you might, if you really need to find cash, you feel prompted to prepare in a certain way, is to take a look at your IRA or your 401k. Now, if you have a Roth IRA, you can pull out the principal without any penalty. So whatever money you put in, you don't have to pull all of it out, but pray, do I need 3,000 of my Roth IRA? If you have a regular IRA or 401k, consider if your family might qualify for the CARES Act. And the CARES Act doesn't just qualify for people who have been sick with COVID, it's for people whose employment has been affected by COVID. So even if you still have a job and you're underemployed because they're telling you not to come in on Fridays, you want to go to your employer or HR and say, hey, listen, I would like to pull out part of my 401k or IRA for emergency under the CARES Act. Your employer does have to sign up on it, but just try that. I mean, remember, you've already changed your pay stub that I mentioned earlier, so that might be enough for what you need. But consider if you want to tap into your Roth or into the CARES Act. And then the last one is basically kind of what Jen and I have been talking about, which is resourcefulness, is to pivot and explore your resourcefulness. Another way that I've actually seen people come up with the money for what they need is to sell their knowledge. So some sort of skill, some sort of experience they have, they're able to offer meetings with people and say, hey, I'll show you how to do this, or let me help you organize your kitchen, or I will sell you this book that shows how to make this. And people are looking for ways to learn from home, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So ride that wave, be resourceful. You have all of the tools and the knowledge that you need to get to the next step of where you're trying to go.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. I keep forgetting about things like the CARES Act, where you can get that money that can help you, especially, if you're working full time and it's and you can go to your employer and you can get those pieces taken care of. It's things like that, because sometimes because it's such a unique, different piece outside of our normal space, right? I think it's kind of easy. Oh yeah, I should probably start contributing to my 401k, because the market's poised for a big correction. And if I keep put money in, it's coming down anyhow. So just stop that contribution. But so often people do things like a 401k because it's like that easy. It just comes out, it just goes automatically and you're not thinking about it. So now's like that time to say, we can't hit the snooze button anymore. And I keep saying this again and again throughout this emergency preparedness challenge is, guys, we cannot hit the snooze button anymore. And so if you've gotten yourself to a place where you've identified those key things that you want to do as far as a goal to move forward, it doesn't mean that you now need to come up with hundreds of dollars to go buy whatever equipment. Maybe you trade with people. Maybe again, there's a barter system or whatever. There's a number of things that Adise has shared with us. But, I think that it's important for us to see how this information is popping up on our radar now. And so if you're in a situation where maybe that CARES Act worked for you, go explore it. You go, I'm not saying to you, Adise, but I'm saying this to the greater audience here. Go just simply explore the option. And so it's there to support and to help kind of take, the edge off of a little bit for people. And if that can help you take the edge off on your emergency preparedness purchases, maybe that's the thing to do, And Adise, I love how you shared an example of something on Facebook recently, where it was a picture of your incredibly cute husband with a big old pile of buckets in the shopping cart. And I
it was on our bucket list. So
yeah, I love it. So I would like for you to share with us, like, what was going on in that, because I think it's a great story as we wrap up this piece here about the budgeting for our emergency preparedness.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I post so many things, Jen. You have to tell me more about it.
Well, it's about how you went to buy and you had all the money in the world, and yet the stuff wasn't available.
Oh, yes. Okay. Guys, listen, think about just a few months ago when everybody was like, where's the toilet paper? It didn't matter if you had $1 million, you were not finding toilet paper, right? So when in a case of emergency and crises, food, water, and medical supplies are worth more than gold. Yes. They are worth more than gold. Hurricane Katrina, you know what people were looking for during all that flood around them? Drinking water. They were selling things for like $20 for a bottle of water. Food and things that keep you alive is worth more than gold. Gold has its place, but it's not going to feed you, honey. It's not going to patch up the wounds. It's not going to give you or quench your thirst. So it's good to prepare with I call it asset-backed investments. The way that things are going, it's good to have some money, but if you're going to make investments, invest in things that are in real things. Like, let's say you buy real estate, right? If the market goes to pot, you still have a house to live in or a house for somebody else to live in. If the market or the food market goes to pot, you still have your pantry, you still have your basement food. So invest in things that you'll use. And on that note, I do want to say that what happens sometimes when we're preparing for emergencies, we kind of panic buy. And the wise thing you can do with your emergency supplies is to be a good steward of it. Just like with money, be a good steward of your money, be a good steward of your emergency food, right? And that means you can't just get it, set it, and forget it. You got to get it and know, what's the expiration date on this? What's the best way to store this? Like, tune in through all of these posts that Jen is sharing with you and learn how to stretch your food. If you just get a bag of rice and stick it on the shelf, it might last for a couple of years. But if you know, hey, I could put this in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and put it in a bucket, that can last you 20 to 40 years. So find ways to make that money that you converted into edible money last longer, serve you longer.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. So, all right. So as we're wrapping this up, I guess, is there any one last little nugget that you want to leave people with when it comes to thinking about budgeting or spending their money for emergency preparedness purchases?
Okay. I would say that whenever there's a looming emergency, or you're feeling like, wow, I need to do this, it's time to put this together, it's really just a reminder of something that you've known all along. All along you've known, I should take a look at what our budget is and manage our money, or I should put some food aside, or I should learn how to can peaches, whatever it is. And it is all little whisperings that happen to us, and then a crisis comes and it just turns up the volume, right?
Yes.
And we want to become the kind of people who learns to listen to promptings or intuition at the low volume, because it's a lot less painful and it gives you a lot more time to work in. right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're feeling something, pray, meditate. Is this the right next step? Focus on the next step, and then just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. If it's just buying, one little carton of pasta, do it. You did the thing and you're like, hey, I followed on that prompting. But as Tony Robbins said, never leave the scene of a decision without taking some sort of specific action towards that. That's what I would leave on.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And Dees, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts with us on the Emergency Preparedness Challenge. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the one best place that they can reach you?
Oh my gosh, I'm everywhere. So honestly, I allow people to just email me directly. It's the best way to get a hold of me, and then I can even let you know when I send out emails and videos. So just email me at my first name, ADHIS, at newmoneymama.com.
Okay.
So newmoneymama.com.
Okay, awesome. I love it. Adis at newmoneymama.com. All right, you guys. So if you need additional help from her, she's there and available for you. And Adis, thanks again. It really means the world to me that you've come on and helped us out with this.
It was so fun. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thank you.